Yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Olympus. In today's video we'll be doing another one of our role model reviews, and the guy we're going to be reviewing, as you can see probably from the title and the thumbnail, is a guy who isn't actually normally looked at in the kind of role model reviews we've been doing here on the channel. Especially if you compare to guys like Andy Dufresne, Tyler Durden and Kratos, but we're going to be looking at Phil Dunphy. He's a fairly laid-back kind of guy, as I said, didn't quite imbue the types of qualities we usually look at, and the ones that are usually associated with masculinity, but he might be just as important as any of them for us to look at, owing to him offering a look at the other side of the masculinity coin that is often forgotten about. And that side is the more goofy, kind of silly and playful side, which is very important for men to be able to draw upon and use. And to be honest, it should probably just be your default sort of setting, and your more Kratos-esque side should be for the more serious moments in life. So I've got 4 things I've found that are basically I feel are worth taking from Phil, and 2 that kind of worth keeping an eye on them, as they may end up hindering you more than helping you grow. So let's get into it. But first, welcome to Olympus. So the 4 things that you can take from Phil that I feel are worth, copying and not copying, sort of emulating and looking at and taking as much as you can from, with putting your own spin on it, so it's authentic to you, not just copying Phil. The first one is that his default state is to try and have fun, and he does this because he wants to and thinks it's awesome, and he doesn't do it just to try and impress others or make him like him, which is very, very important. And the ways in the show that this is shown is pretty much any scene Phil is in, because it's pretty much all of them. And there are far too many for me to list here, but just a few examples. You've got the Awesome Land episode with the Halloween, which is one of the Halloween episodes, which is very good. And then you've got Wook's birthday party, I think in season 1, could be in season 2, I think it's season 1. There's a couple of examples, but most of the show will cover this for you. And the crucial part though is that he's doing that because that's what he wants to do, and he's not doing it just to try and get others to like him. Another character who kind of has this default setting but for different reasons is Chandler Bing. He uses a defense mechanism, and as funny as Chandler is, having it as a defense mechanism in basically to try and get people to like you, it comes across as inauthentic and might put people off hanging out around with you. Whereas Phil, it kind of, because it's all his authentic self and he's just doing what he thinks is awesome, then it comes across as likable. So it's got to be authentic to you. You've got to have fun in a way that's authentic to you, not in a way that just to placate others, if that makes sense. Thing number 2 is that he cares for his family deeply. I will touch on this again in the negative side, however, because there is a couple of bits that are worth mentioning on the negatives there. But for the positive side, the way that Phil is very protective of his family when the situation calls for it is incredible, and is definitely worth taking forward. The best example of this is just after Haley gets kicked out of college. Haley is his oldest daughter, for those of you who haven't seen the show. If you haven't, I'd recommend watching it. It's quite a good show. Modern Family is the show Phil is from. Basically, just after Haley gets kicked out of college, she's in the hospital, and for the preceding weeks they've kind of been making fun or kind of maybe complaining. A bit difficult to describe what they've basically just reminding Haley all the time that she got kicked out of college rather than leaving college. So she thinks her parents are really upset with her and don't really care anymore. So they're in the hospital because Gloria is giving birth, I believe, is why they're in hospital. Haley is going out with a kind of older, creepy-ish kind of guy called Kenny. And Phil is not happy about this, but he goes along with Claire's plan, basically to not react, because reacting would give Haley what she wants. So Claire convinces Phil to just kind of let it play out. Haley and Kenny go to leave, and this is when Phil snaps and he goes to go after her. Haley returns and is really upset with Claire for, not seeming to care, and then Phil comes back in and starts talking to Claire about how important it's like his little girl, and no guy on earth's good enough for her. The typical dad kind of conversation, and then Haley hears it and then gives him a big hug, and it's really sweet. But that's the moment when you see the properly protective side of Phil come out, and it's amazing to see. The show doesn't really give him enough of those kind of moments, but when it does come through, it's really It really is great to see, and is a really good thing that you should take forward. And that brings me kind of nicely onto thing number 3, which is that he is more in touch with his feelings and a bit more of an emotional being than the other more traditional views on masculinity that we've discussed on this channel before, like Kratos or Tyler Durden. And whilst there is a line where you can be too in touch with your emotions that end up becoming repulsive, Phil is a great example of balancing this perfectly. A great example of kind of both polar ends is Bruce Willis's character in Friends. Paul, I think he's called. He's just a love machine, that guy. Okay, so at first he's like very closed book, like nothing at all, and then Rachel tries to get him to open up a bit, and then he just ends up crying the whole time. That is a great example of either end, and there's a balance you can walk in the middle, and Phil is that balance perfectly. So if you can get that balance right, you are golden. And then thing number 4 is that Phil is not afraid of judgment, and this does kind of link back into all the other 3, and especially the first point, but it is worth bringing up again as it is a very important thing to remember. If Phil likes something, he will do it and have fun doing it regardless of what other people think. An example of this is his street strider thing. It's like a elliptical trainer thing, but like on wheels. It's like a bike, but like an elliptical. It looks a bit weird. You can actually buy them online if you want. It'll cost you about £2,000. But he thinks it's cool, despite the fact nobody else thinks so, and everyone else seems to have a very valid reason for thinking it's not cool, because it's not exactly cool, is it? But Phil doesn't care. He just lets it. He doesn't let that stop him. He just rides it from his house to Jay's house. They never really say how far away that is, but I assume it's a sizable difference because they tend to drive there every time, so I assume it's fairly far away. There are many more examples you can get of this quality in Phil. You'll pick up just by kind of watching the show. But that is kind of the main one I take away, is the street strider thing. But then you've also got the other ones like the ducks. Everyone else says the ducks are dead, and Phil doesn't care, and he's just looking after them, and then he ends up being right about them not being dead. You've got what else is? There's a bunch of other examples you could take away from them. Just not really. Phil doesn't really care if he thinks it's cool. Again, Awesome Land's a great example. He doesn't care what other people think about it. That's just sort of his thing. He's like, this is what I think is cool, and that's it. He goes with it. However, in order for the sake of fairness and to give you a proper look on Phil, there is a couple of negatives to bear in mind when it comes to Phil. The first one is that he's actually quite passive most of the time. He does tend to just go with the flow when it comes to most of the important things in life, such as when he lets Gil Thorpe boy him around, or Mitzi Roth boy him around in the real estate game, or most of the relationship he has with Jay throughout the show. He tends to basically have that relationship not be on his terms. It changes a bit towards the end of the show, when they start to make Jay a slightly different character, so then him and Phil sort of become a bit more buddy-like. But for most of the early show, they don't really seem to care. Like, Phil worships Jay, and Jay doesn't really care about Phil. There are a few exceptions to this, such as the Haley example that we did touch on earlier. There are a few others, but a lot of the time he's either super passive, or it just ends up being super strict if he's trying to not be passive. And there's very little in the middle. An example of super strict Phil is the episode in season 1 when he cancels Christmas. And there is a balance though that you need to be able to strike between when to be tough and when to have fun. And I don't feel Phil quite gets that balance right. Obviously that's more on the writers than actually on the actor Tyrell, but that is a thing to bear in mind, is trying to get that balance right. As I said, you probably want your default setting to be the fun setting, and then the super strict version comes in when the situation calls for it. And then thing number 2 is that he tends to avoid super important but conversations that might be awkward or uncomfortable, especially when it really matters. The first example of this is when they think that Luke has been looking at inappropriate images on the family laptop. Not only does he not have a proper conversation with him about it, he lies about the fact it was him. He was looking at it. Spoilers for that episode, but I'm sure most of you have seen it. He was the one looking at it, so not only did he not say that, he also then doesn't have a proper conversation with Luke about it. He just sort of ends up. They play a game of slaps, which for those of you who don't know, it's like a game where you and a friend have your hands like this, and you try to slap the other person's hand, and You try and move them. It's quite fun, to be fair. But another example, probably a better example actually, is when his dad is suffering after Phil's mum passes away, and obviously his dad's wife, and he just avoids talking to him about it, literally until Claire forces him to by locking him in the RV with his dad. So then they have a conversation about it, but other than that, they just try and avoid the conversations. However, being able to have those tough conversations is important, as those conversations are normally a blocking point between what you want and where you are now. So if you can get through them, they will be tough and will be quite uncomfortable, but they are important to have. So as you can see, there is plenty to like about Phil, and plenty to keep an eye on for yourself if you're going to try and get a few of these qualities into yourself. But overall, I'd say he's a fantastic example, and probably the best example of what modern masculinity might look like. He's caring and loving and playful, but when it calls for it, he does actually really stand up for his family, or try to help others whenever he can. There is an old saying that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. This basically means that it is great to be somebody like Kratos, for instance, when the situation calls for it, but most of the time you are a bit closer towards Phil Dunphy, and then you'll probably be a very good man in today's world. Surprisingly good example of a great character who has this sort of balance down right is Mufasa in the 1994 Lion King film, but that is something I think we should cover in another video. But that is all for today's video, so don't be afraid to embrace your playful side whilst not losing the warrior energy inside of you. And that is all for today's video. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you are new around here. That is all for now. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see you later. Welcome to Olympus.